Hey guys, it's Ryan, living in Ecuador, sharing this beautiful country with you, and this is a COVID-19 update.
COVID-19 update.
I want to fill everybody in as far as what's going on with the COVID-19 restrictions. Ecuador is putting the strict in restrictions, and also the vaccine, how it's coming along. Sarah has got the vaccine. I'm going to try to find a way to get her to come talk about it on camera. Bribery probably is the best way to go, beer or chocolate. We'll see. I'm also going to rant a bunch, including a story about how we got stuck in Quito past curfew and what we had to do to get home. So lots of fun coming up. Fun, maybe not the best word. Stick around for it though.
People like this. Y'all don't know people like this. Y'all don't know people like this. Y'all don't know people like this.
Currently, Ecuador is in a state of emergency.
State of emergency. State of emergency. State of emergency.
I believe this is the third, maybe fourth state of emergency that's been declared since we moved here 2 years ago. Seems to be a thing that they like to do, I guess. A state of emergency is basically a way for the government to control what the people do. They go, it's a state of emergency. Now we are in control and you cannot say whether you can leave your house or not. That's up to us. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. There are restrictions on when we can leave our house. Now, I want to say that I'm all for doing whatever I can to get through this hopefully once in a lifetime tragedy that's going on across the world. I haven't left my house without a mask in over a year. I haven't hung out with anybody but Sarah in a social situation for more than a year. And that's not just because I don't have any friends. But I find the restrictions in Ecuador right now to be a little bit ridiculous. We're not allowed to leave our house on weekends from Friday at 8 p.m. till Monday at 5 a.m. You have to stay home. It applies to 16 provinces in Ecuador, which is pretty much the whole country. I don't really know why, but the Ecuadorian government seems to want everybody to be out at the same time instead of spreading out when people leave. They gave us 2 days notice for this, so you can imagine how busy it was at the grocery store on the 2 days before the lockdown. It was crazy. It was packed, and it was the first time in a long time, probably since COVID-19 started, that I actually felt threatened by it. This is me at the grocery store on Friday at 10 a.m. just a couple of days ago. It's just about 30 minutes after it opened, and you can see it's packed, it's busy, and it's been like this on Fridays and Mondays since they put the restrictions in place. Isn't this kind of the opposite of what we want right now? Here's where we're at as far as cases and deaths go. Hospitals are full. In Ecuador, there are 2 doctors for every 1,000 people, which is pretty low. But it doesn't help that 428 doctors have died in Ecuador due in some way to the pandemic. I think the government is doing a terrible job at handling this situation, but we can't put all the blame on them. We also have to blame the people a little bit. I'm sorry, Ecuadorian friends out there, but I really do think that just the culture here, it made it a lot more difficult for people to stay away from each other. Ecuadorians are just more physical with each other. When they say goodbye to each other, when they say hello to each other, they kiss each other on each cheek. You know, in Canada, we maybe shake hands. I don't even do that most of the time. In China, they don't do anything. Just out of all the cultures I've ever lived in, Ecuador is definitely the most intimate when it comes to touching each other. Most Ecuadorians have replaced the kiss on the cheek at this time with the fist bump, which I see all the time now. But just the other day, I was standing at the edge of my balcony here and I observed my neighbor, who's a doctor. He was getting a bread delivery and he was talking to the delivery driver a little bit. And then when they said goodbye, they hugged each other, which isn't typical. People aren't hugging their delivery drivers every time they get a delivery in Ecuador. Obviously, they knew each other, but he's a doctor. He should probably be more careful about who he's hugging. And it just didn't seem like it was necessary. But I think there's a lot of that going on in Ecuador. The people here just have warmer hearts. They're more intimate. They crave human affection more than people in other countries, I think. There are also reports of secret parties happening. The police broke up a party that was 2,000 people. People are having raves, underground raves and stuff, just ignoring the restrictions. So if people are going to act like children and not obey the rules, should the government treat them like children and give them a bedtime, which is pretty much what they did. We're not allowed out of the house after 8 p.m. on any days. So basically curfew from 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. every single night, and then all day on the weekends, which is incredibly frustrating at times and became a problem for us the other day when we were out in Quito. It was about 40 minutes till curfew, so we called an Uber. The Uber took 20 minutes to get close to us, and then he canceled suddenly. So we had about 20 minutes to find a ride home. We scrambled, called more Ubers, nobody was answering. waved down taxis, nobody was stopping. Eventually 8 o'clock rolls around and we found ourselves in Quito, about 5 kilometers away from our house, past curfew, and we had to walk home. We had to walk through the longest vehicular tunnel in Ecuador, then down a highway that was not lit very well as cars raced by us to try to get home because they were out past curfew. I was furious.
Walking in the ditch on the side of the highway. The coronavirus is going to get you if you don't get home before 8.
I think Sarah was furious too.
You gotta book it here.
We were both pretty pissed off because we gave ourselves 40 minutes to go home. We just couldn't find a ride. And it's just the idea like, oh no, we're out past curfew. Like the coronavirus is going to come after us like vampires. Like it's so ridiculous. Legally, the police could have arrested us and put us in prison for that, which is really unlikely to happen, under the circumstances. And the police aren't, I think they give people some time to get home, but still, legally they could have, and that's just frustrating to me. This state of emergency started on April 23rd, and it's going to go until May 21st. Earlier this week, the Quito Chamber of Commerce, the Ecuadorian Medical Federation, and the United Federations of Health Professionals of Ecuador sent out a joint statement expressing their concern at the effectiveness of the latest measures adopted by the national COE. They're asking the government to suspend the lockdown on weekends because 1, it isn't working, and 2, it's severely affecting the businesses in Ecuador. In the first 2 weekends of lockdown alone, the Quito Chamber of Commerce has estimated that there was $1.5 billion in economic losses. In Quito, small businesses and medium businesses make 40 to 60% of their money on weekends, so this lockdown is totally crippling them. In the document that they co-wrote and sent to the government, it read, and this is a translation, "We express our concern at the ineffectiveness of the latest measures adopted by the National Emergency Operations Committee and the serious consequences they leave on the economy of hundreds of thousands of families who depend on their businesses, the daily work of doctors and health personnel, and the health system. We are concerned about the increase in infections due to the crowds generated at the beginning and end of each week after the confinements on Saturday and Sunday." Yeah, no shit. I called this when they first announced it, and I'm like barely educated. I went to film school for fuck's sakes. So this is the medical industry and the business community, 2 factions that often disagree on common issues, and they're coming together to figure out the best thing for the country. This is the people that the government should be listening to. They also said that they wanted to put together a panel of experts to prepare a crisis plan for the country. This is something, in my opinion, that should happen. The government hasn't responded as far as I know yet. And this weekend, the restrictions are still in place. In fact, today is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. And it's a huge day in Ecuador. People buy gifts, they take their mothers out for dinner. Usually a bunch of family goes out together, spends a lot of money. It's a big day for businesses in Ecuador, and there's going to be a huge amount of losses because they weren't allowed to do that this year. Now, do you think that stopped them from getting together? No, probably not. They got together on Friday instead, or whenever. People are going to find time to get together. That's just what they do here. And these restrictions on weekends are not going to affect that. It's only just going to make more people go at the same time. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Not the tunnel that we had to walk through to get home because we were out past curfew and we couldn't find a ride. Hey, we made it through the tunnel. I'm talking about the proverbial tunnel. The vaccination process is happening in Ecuador. First, they vaccinated the healthcare workers and the elderly. Then they did the police and the army and the waste management people. And just last week, Sarah got a phone call and she was told, if you want the vaccine, you can get it today. So let's talk to Sarah and see how that went.
Bouncy, bouncy, shoes all in a line. I got a phone call at like 7 in the morning that said I have to go get my vaccine at 11, but I had to be there an hour before, so I had to be there at 10. So 3 hours. That was the weekend for teachers to be back. I guess a period of 2 weekends. That weekend and the next weekend, all teachers. And it was on a Saturday during lockdown. You're not allowed to leave the house unless you're essential personnel or you're going for a vaccine. So I had to find a taxi and no one was into it. So I had to ask around and finally got a contact from somebody. Got a taxi, got there by the skin of my teeth to the vaccination location. I was lined up around the block when I got there. Yeah, I stood in line for maybe an hour. I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention to the time, but maybe about an hour I stood in line outside to get into the venue. And then once I got in, there was like more sitting. It was not that well organized. It was the first time they were doing it at that place, I think. They had everyone sit in chairs, but there was no row order. So then a bunch of people got up to go get in line, and then it was just like musical chairs. Everybody ran to the front to try and get in the front seat. And then people started arguing and yelling at each other. And then the organizer guy was like, okay, one line at a time, one line at a time. And everyone settled down. Had to give my details to the registration person, and then they sent me to get my vitals checked. And then they sent me to get the vaccine.
What vaccine did you get?
AstraZeneca. And then I had to get my vitals checked again and sit for 15 minutes and then get my vitals checked again before I left. And that was it. And it took me like maybe 3.5 hours from the point where I left it took me longer from the point where I left the house because I was waiting for the taxi for a really long time.
When did you get your second dose?
Unknown. It'll be the same situation. They'll call me the morning and be like, you gotta go now.
It didn't cost any money?
Nope, no money.
Ha 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 ha. Great story, Sarah. I read an article recently that was talking about the vaccination process here, and it was saying that a lot of people are showing up 3 hours early for their appointment, or sometimes they don't have an appointment at all. There have been crazy long lines and just a lot of stress in the whole situation, people waiting out in the sun to get these vaccines, and the healthcare workers are basically saying, stick to your appointment, don't come early, don't come if you don't have an appointment, and the whole process will go a lot smoother. Apparently vaccines will be available to anyone over the age of 18 here at the end of May. I don't know if I'm going to qualify because I don't have the official cedula, the Ecuadorian ID, so I can't make an appointment online. I checked it out already, but there may be a way around it. The government has said that anybody who is legally residing in Ecuador will be able to get a vaccine, so we'll see what happens. I'm not really expecting it, but it'd be great if I could get one. But apparently a lot of people here are flying to Florida to get a vaccine. I read one article about a couple that did it. They managed to actually get a vaccine before their grandparents did here in Ecuador. The article said that if Ecuador was vaccinating people at the rate that America was, the entire country would have been vaccinated in 3 to 4 days, which obviously isn't possible. It's just not realistic here, but it's a pretty interesting statistic. Of course, I'm pretty tired of all this shit. I think we all are. These are really tough times. I guess we just have to power through them, but it's extra frustrating when there are these restrictions in place and you're not allowed to do certain things, and for nothing really. It's actually making things more dangerous, I think, and it's also really hurting the economy of Ecuador, which is already in a lot of trouble. I'm Ryan, signing off with IFOTC News.
IFOTC News.
If you agree that the restrictions in Ecuador are too much, they're going too far, hit that thumbs up or leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, and let's get through this. COVID in Ecuador. Jesus. So tired of this shit.
Prefer when I'm by myself. I don't wanna hang around y'all. Pray for good health. One day I'm gonna go ball. Fuck around and buy the whole mall. Breaking that cake. Flexing 700 in the bank. Not a superhero, I don't save. Look at my face. Look at my grades. Don't match up, no love.